Hello, this is the first in the series of Ask the ERABBI questions. Several people wrote me questions, which I'm not going to answer, as this first in the series of videos. First question was basically just to describe the general theory of revelation of Judaism. And this came from a fellow named Abraham, a Muslim interested in converting to Judaism. Well, you have to see my videos on the various basis of who wrote the Torah and other videos I have on this subject. But essentially, there's a big difference between what the Orthodox fundamentalists believe and what the rest of the Jewish people believe. The Orthodox believe that the Torah, 5 books of Moses, was essentially written exactly by God to Moses, either on Mount Sinai or during the 40 years, which would be a liberal interpretation. The rest of the Jewish people follow the general theories of the documentary hypothesis that the Torah is a composite document of several other documents. It was oral for a long time and finally edited sometime around the 5th century or after BCE. And there are various views about the extent to which how much of it is actually revelation from God, ranging from Jews who say all of it to Jews who say none of it, like the original Reconstructionists, for example. On the second question, it was a question about a fella who was not circumcised as a child who's Jewish and wants to know if he still is obligated to be circumcised. I wrote, you should see my video on circumcision, Brit Milah. I mentioned to him that we have several examples in Jewish history of people like that, large groups. For example, the generation that was in the desert after the slavery exodus, they said that they rolled back the reproachment of being not circumcised in the desert, and they got circumcised when they got to Israel. In recent times, a lot of the Russian males who came from Soviet Union who were not circumcised have become circumcised. Yes, you're under the obligation to still be circumcised. You're still Jewish if you aren't, but it is the first mitzvah, and you should have that taken care of. Next question from Jeremy. What is the biblical basis of Messianism, of the Jewish idea of the Messiah? Well, there are some standard ideas in rabbinic literature about what Messiah does, but I'll give you some of the biblical sources, mostly from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 1, the Sanhedrin will be reestablished. Isaiah 2, once the Messiah is king, leaders of other nations will look to him for guidance. Isaiah 2, the whole world will worship the one God of Israel. And Chronicles, and Isaiah 11, he will be descended from King David. Isaiah 11, the Mashiach will be a man of this world, an observant Jew with the fear of God. Isaiah 11, evil and tyranny will not be able to stand before his leadership. Isaiah 11, knowledge of God will fill the whole world. Isaiah 11, he will include and attract people from all cultures and nations. All Israel will be returned to their homeland. Death will be swallowed up forever. Isaiah 25, there will be no more cases of hunger or illness, and death will cease. Isaiah 26, all the dead will rise again. Isaiah 51, the Jewish people will experience eternal joy and gladness. 52 will be a messenger of peace. Isaiah 52, nations will end up recognizing the wrongs they did to Israel, and there's dozens of more. Basically, it's clear the Messiah has not come. Anybody who says the Messiah has come is blind to the evidence. And nowhere does it say that Messiah is going to come again. Okay, then Jeremy also asked, what is there exactly in a written record of Jesus by his contemporaries outside the New Testament? And there are, Josephus, the historian, mentions Jesus, although some scholars question the authenticity of that selection. Tacitus mentions Jesus. There's some references to Jesus in the Talmud. The New Testament was written from 10 to 70 years, the account of his death, after his death. Okay, then, Chaim asks, can you eat fowl and milk? The answer is no, not for hundreds of years. Originally, fowl was considered to be parv, neutral, but now it's considered to be meat, therefore cannot be eaten together. And he asks, does a chicken need to be ritually slaughtered? The answer is absolutely yes. To be kosher, needs to be ritually slaughtered. Chaim also asks, he said he was converted by an independent rabbi. Will that be recognized by conservative rabbis? And the answer is, essentially, if he studied, and if he went to the mikveh, and if he has been ritually circumcised or symbolically circumcised in a ritual manner called hatafat dam, most conservative rabbis would recognize it. And there should be a Beit Din that signed the certificate, but most conservative rabbis, I can't say all, I don't know what all of my colleagues would do, but most would. And finally, Christopher asks about gematria. And by the way, I have videos on kashrut, I have many videos on Jews and Jesus and Jews not for Jesus. videos on Messiah, which can help explicate all of these answers I've given. And the final question for this week, Christopher asks about gematria. You should see my video on gematria. He asks, gematria is basically a system where every letter of the alphabet gets a numerical coefficient, and you derive spiritual and mystical meanings from various words based on the numerical content. And he asks if that was done in Aramaic too. And the answer is yes, it was done in many languages. In fact, the Rabbi Emeritus here does it very quickly in English. If A is 1 and Z is 26, he can come up instantly with a variety of words based on any number. Now, there's no basis for that historically in Judaism. He has a lot of fun with it and derives insights from it. But the point is that gematria was done in many languages, but the one that's considered to be authoritative by the entire mystical Jewish tradition and by Judaism in general is the one that's done in Hebrew. So those are my answers briefly to the questions that Jews ask week 1, and next week we'll be back with more questions. If you have any questions, please email me at rabbi@ehnt.org. Thank you. Shalom.